most amazing, thoughtful, structured, informative Substack around talent management and workforce planning called Talent in Beta. We'll share the links below in our LinkedIn as well. But Kitty's just so thoughtful, and we jam about this topic. Forecast why that doesn't work, why it works, where it falls through, what can you do, what should talent teams think about. There's just a lot of things to uncover, and as you can see, I'm just excited to dive into it. But first, Katie, I'd love for you to introduce yourself a little bit, how you got into your current role. Tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, hi everybody, and thanks for the warm welcome. Very nice, and yes, love our conversations, geeking out on this topic. I've been in HR one form or another over the last decade plus. Recruiting specifically, have kind of been through every type of stage and industry you can think of, whether that's public or hypergrowth to IPO to earlier stage. More recently, I was the head of talent at a company called Tarro, and am now at Growth by Design doing some advisory work. And for those of you who know GBD, I've just known Adam for the last several years, and was catching up with him, and was kind of talking to him about some career stuff. So I'm super excited to be with the GBD team. That's a bit about me.
That's amazing. And Katie, how did you get into the talent function? Let's go backwards a little bit and tell us a little bit about that too.
Yeah. Well, I, as typical with any recruiter, you never go into recruiting intentionally, majority of the time. But I started off actually in L&D, learning and development, got my graduate degree in that, and started off instructional designer, and just kind of kept getting taps on the shoulder of, you're doing a good job at facilitating this. Let's also facilitate leadership development. That turned into university programs, building and facilitating content for that, which turned into a tap on the shoulder of, you're already training these people. Why don't you go ahead and hire them too? And the rest is history.
Amazing. Full circle there, huh? That's great. I myself, formerly as an operator, I faced a lot of pain points, with forecasting and budgeting and being able to hire the right people at the right time. And, the easiest thing to do is assume that the talent team is not hiring fast enough or hiring the right people, right? That's the easy answer. It's often the wrong answer. There's a number of challenges, right, from forecasting all the way down. So maybe let's just start at the very top. Like, can you help us think through like the problem statement, right? Like what is the problem? What are the different pieces around it? I think you actually in your most recent Substack wrote, recruiting is not broken. It's forecasting that's usually broken. And so, let's unpack that.
Yeah. And, the forecast itself, at many different organizations, I've seen this come true, where you kind of lock in this AOP, finance locks the budget, and then the headcount plan from that is turned over to the recruiting team. And then within 24 hours, you usually get some sort of new recruiting request that wasn't on that plan. I think the example that I was kind of alluding to in my Substack post was, the budget's locked in, talent starts recruiting against it, and then reality hits where, we land a big customer, and in order to land it, we had to promise a new product feature rollout. And in the meantime, until we can do that, let's cover it with operations of like physical people to cover the gaps. And then, all of a sudden it's we need to hire 50 plus people in the next week before this new client onboards. So it's kind of this vicious cycle of recruiting, like feeling like it's constantly behind. And the reality is that it's not. It's just the recruiting team built their capacity and their strategy and their org structure around what was in the final plan. So when anything changes to that, it can feel really reactionary, and talent leaders spend a ton of time just moving people around. I've always call it a puzzle of recruiter capacity.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle. A lot of things change on the fly, whether you said it's on the sales side, you landed a customer or maybe didn't land a customer. It's on the product side, some other priority. So business objectives are changing, or some of the business KPIs are changing, and it's having real-time impact on the needs for the workforce. Capacity planning is lagging in many ways because of whether it's communication, having talent people in the room, aligning on things. Okay, those are some good points, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's it's not necessarily that the forecast is incorrect at that moment in time. So finance is locking in a plan based on reality, based on what they know at that point in time. And you can't necessarily base the scenario on overachieving, because if you don't achieve it, then of course we all know where that leads if you overhire. But if we're able to understand more upfront, how can the plan change based on reality of talent being in the room, knowing cross-functionally all the different initiatives that could impact headcount needs, we could get ahead of it better.
Yeah, I think something you mentioned, the business is living and breathing, so the forecast has to be living and breathing too. It might be accurate at a point in time, but it's changing and evolving with the business and the needs.
Right.
That's a good way to think through this. So why does this really matter? I'm a founder, CEO. There, you've worked with many companies, with the founders, with the executive team.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people assume it's an isolated problem.
Assume it's a recruiting problem. Recruiting is automatically behind if it's a reactionary sprint. If we didn't know about it in advance, we don't have the proper way to plan for our team's capacity or even build a strategy. It might be that there are trade-offs that we're having to make with other priority roles. So if you're lagging behind on recruiting, or seem to be, obviously there's a risk in missed business goals if you're not able to satisfy those needs with a gap in capacity on the business side. But then what I see time and time again too is, if you're reacting to this hiring sprint of we needed this yesterday, there's a risk of hiring the wrong people, meaning, hiring managers aren't willing to slow down for proper calibration before beginning the recruitment process, or believe it or not, a lot of hiring managers can settle on a hire, choosing speed over quality, but they're in a tough spot. They need to be able to execute, but if they don't have people to do it, what are your options? But then when you do find a good candidate, it's anything to close it. So there could be overspend on compensation, hiring, or just, kind of skipping over consideration if there's a different solution other than headcount. And then, of course, kind of going back to the, example of closing a new client, there's a risk of customer churn. If you don't have capacity to support those outputs of new initiatives, new customers, your existing and new customers could leave if they're not getting the proper support that they need. So it's much bigger than just, recruiting siloed. And I feel like there is a big opportunity to ensure that talent leaders are embedded within the business cross-functionally and really know, the business acumen of how that can impact their team.
Yeah, so like many downstream things, right? Like some of what you might just mention, you might hire the wrong person, the wrong skills, but there's business impact. Like maybe you're not able to hire and serve the business needs, whether it's a new customer or a new project.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, it's having impact across the business, right? Like, so
Yeah.
if you can't hit your KPIs, then it's definitely it's impacting the business as directly as can be.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. And how do you help like I'll ask this from my lens as well. Like, how do you help founders or leaders connect the dots, right? Because maybe they're not connecting the dots. It's one or two steps away removed, but then 3 months later, they're not able to build the product they wanted, or they don't have like the territory coverage with sales, or they don't have the right CSM in the right role, big customer. People find out too late. So how do you help like coach or communicate this to leadership?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so, it's such an interesting, I guess, process. And it really depends on kind of like your communication culture at the organization too. But there's this, like, if you think of like a sales product feedback loop, like there's a feedback loop for recruiting too. And so not only can we communicate, what capacity looks like on our team today and, what we can do today with our existing resources versus what we would need in order to hit this goal. But also really just being in the room cross-functionally with the right people to understand, what's actually happening and pointing it out in real time of, oh, you're building a new incentive structure. Does that mean higher growth targets? And is your likelihood of, succeeding in that, has that gone up since the original plan? So if you're embedded with the business like that, then that's when you can come in and say, how is this going to impact headcount? Not only to you, department who created the incentive plan, but how is that going to impact other departments that a lot of people may not think about as well? And if you can get all the right people into the same room to discuss that regularly, it can really kind of be like this living, breathing headcount plan review.
Oh, and yeah. I mean, there's a lot of nuggets in there. One thing I just gave me flashbacks as well was there's like a sort of a daisy chain effect of this, right? So maybe you didn't hire the engineer, or you didn't hire the product manager, so you couldn't build out so it's impacting the engineering team, or you didn't hire the designer, so you don't have the product designs. So then the engineering team can't do their work and ship the right thing, and then which then impacts marketing and sales. And so like that's even the impact of one of these things might not be isolated to that one specific department, because I mean like
it's interesting being on the recruiting side. Is one of the aspects I love about recruiting is you get to know more about each department in detail of like what is their day to day, because you're recruiting for it, right? But that's unique to HR talent, and for each department that is considering this, they might not automatically think of this new advertisement is going to be going out. We didn't we planned this after we already set the budget. It was a trade-off of something else that we were going to do because we felt this would have, and then all of a sudden it works really well, but you don't have the capacity to support the increase of growth of customers, whether that's on, the CS side or the operations side, whatever it may be.
Amazing. I think we've touched on a lot of the problems and the impact of the business. Thank you for that. Let's dive into like some of the solutioning as well.
Mm-hmm,
So like,
mm-hmm.
I'd love to get your take on like, at first at the high level, like how to think about what are the frameworks, what are the processes to solve this. And we'll get into more of the tactical details later, but help our audience kind of think through this more holistically. Like,
So you have, company plan, AOP, annual operating plan. Sometimes that's quarterly, sometimes that's once a year, whatever that may be. Before you even get to headcount planning, go to recruiting scenarios of what can we accomplish today, realistically, based on our existing team and resources. And go from there to work in partnership with finance on building the plan. That's where, headcount planning comes in, where you're partnering together. And then, from there, you build out the strategy of how you're going to meet this. And that may look different depending on what the scenario is.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So you have that, and what are your recommendations? Like, so you have an annual operating plan. Should it be revised quarterly, monthly? When is talent brought into the plan as well? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that changes org to org as well. But I would say, in a perfect world, talent's in the room during the planning period to truly understand, ask the questions of, how is this going to impact people, your org? But then also, regular follow-ups where it's not just like a one-time plan. It's more so where maybe you figure out some type of recurring cadence with the right people in the room, whether that's weekly, if your organization tends to change drastically on a daily basis, maybe it's monthly if that's not the case, to check in. But in those check-in meetings, just pressure test, like, what are sales forecasts looking like? What's your confidence level of being able to achieve or overachieve? What is your, best case scenario, your blue sky growth? And, realistically, like, what would you need from a headcount perspective if you achieve that? What about other departments? What if we land this enterprise customer? What if we launch a new product early on? It's just that, living system where you're talking through what are all the initiatives happening in the business at any moment in time, and how can that impact headcount needs?
That's very helpful. And I think one of the things you just talked about was having multiple scenarios. Can you unpack that a little bit? How should, other than the base case, how should organizations think about that? Do you need 3? Like, how do you create the bounds of what's possible?
Yeah. Well, I think that's just kind of based on reality of what's going on in the business, right? I think, like, if I were to dive in deeper of like, what does this look like? That could look like WBRs with different cross-functional partners. Do you have a company WBR where every single functional leader is going through, their progress to goal, any upcoming initiatives, and everybody's kind of hearing it, and then has a moment to be able to flag, hey, this initiative that you have impacts my headcount and budget needs, and making sure there's a line item in the agenda for that. So, if you're communicating cross-functionally, yeah, it sounds simple for sure, but it's there's some people, kind of like moan and groan at, weekly cadences or whatever it may be, but you have to work in sync together to understand, like, how is my work impacting somebody else? And then, like, if you have a significant change that was flagged in that, org-wide WBR, then you have a regular cadence with talent, finance, HR, any like relevant business leaders to discuss headcount and, how can recruiting support that?
Well, that's super helpful. I wanted to maybe click into the WBR a little bit more. Who are the personas that should be in a WBR? I think you touched on it, but what are like good agenda items, like to kind of in a healthy WBR? What are the things you suggest people go through typically?
Yeah. We had a really great WBR system at DoorDash when I was there, and truly, it opened my eyes so much to what was going on with everybody. And typically that was, what's your like priority goal? What are your like individual goals? How are you progressing against them? Are there any trade-offs that you need to make? Are there any asks of the business? But then, like, where I see an opportunity of like where talent leaders can come in is, is there a line item for every functional template saying, sure. Do you need headcount based on, X initiative? Because if they're constantly sharing, we have this, we have this new promo coming out. We're really excited for it. Here are our expected results. Yeah. Then, another team leader may say, oh, well, if you do achieve those results, then, I need somebody to be able to support it on the back end to help you. So it's all about communication.
And maybe like a hot topic question. So if there's tons of budgets and stuff, some of these conversations are easier. But when you have to make trade-offs around headcount, like maybe this month we can only hire 5 people across, right? And maybe engineering's asking for resources, but customer success is as well. Are the WBRs the right kind of forum to have those conversations? And
that's kind of what I mean of like, flag it, and then let's have like a smaller group with the right people in the room to discuss, like, how do we need to evolve this headcount plan? Let's dive in to understand the problem, and then do we need to shift it from there?
Got it. Okay. Sometimes you need to break out and have separate conversations and work through those things. That makes sense. What are the outputs of or outcomes of a successful WBR? What does that look like? And artifacts, outcomes. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, one, achievement of goals, because everybody's aware of what everybody else is doing. But 2, putting, my HR hat on, there's a level of, from a company culture standpoint, people are engaged. They really understand what everybody's going through. People are more empathetic to what they're going through and understanding like how their work impacts others and how others' work impacts them, just from like an interpersonal standpoint of like, I think I can communicate with this person. So that's my HR answer for you, I guess.
Oh, but that's good. I mean, like, you're thinking about it holistically, right? Like, because ultimately you want to hire the right people, but and have them be successful and ramp up and KPIs. Yeah. So I think that's good.
Yeah. And I feel like too, a lot of times that's when it comes to fruition that if somebody's talking about one initiative and another person's working on something almost exactly the same. You're discovering like, hey, we're both doing this. Let's talk about like who should be owning this and what outcomes should look like, so we're not, wasting money on multiple projects at once as well. So
I think that's really good advice too. I'm going to maybe expand on it. Like, it's good for everyone to be aligned on the full kind of thread from what's the company priority, the KPIs, who's owning things, the sequencing. So everyone's aligned to the same goals. Who's driving it. Like, you need ownership. I think a lot of things fall between the cracks when there's no real owner, and also other challenges when there's multiple owners. At least you drive clarification. So you can actually execute on things well, all the way down to kind of hiring for the role. So
yeah. And tying that back to hiring too, it's, eliminating, even from just an org design standpoint.
That's right.
A lot of times when, you have these duplicative initiatives happening by different teams, they'll be requesting the same headcount to support it as well. And so the talent team will start to recognize like, oh, you're working on this role, so am I for this other team. Let's talk about org design and, loop in HR from there as well. So that way you're not hiring two people doing the same thing.
That's true. Or you've hired in the wrong sequence too. I think we touched on an example before where maybe you hired like, you didn't have a product designer or a product manager, and you started hiring engineering. So then who's going to drive the project with engineering? And ultimately, it's like, if you're building a 0 to 1 product, you need kind of the full SWAT team. And if you have only some of the roles, then will you be able to actually achieve your objectives? Perhaps not. And so seeing prioritization like that's key too.
Exactly.
And so what are like any guidance on like after the WBR edition, like processes, tools, and like other things to help kind of facilitate?
Luckily, there's some tooling out there that exists today that connects systems from finance teams, HR teams, talent teams in one place, to where you have like one source of truth. And that's super helpful to be able to kind of be on the same page and being able to talk each other's language and looking at, one set of data, not a million different spreadsheets. My wish list would be able to also add growth and product systems into one places too. Just so that we can understand, product roadmap, especially if it's shifting, and growth, to understand like goal versus actual as well.
And that's helpful. So like, I think some really cool stuff like understanding sales goals, sales targets. That's one piece of it. Product roadmap. So like, I guess those are all core inputs into helping put together these plans, right? So how did you get access to this information in the past?
Well, really, without tooling, it's the consistent recurring meetings, whether that's a WBR, whether that's like a project group, whatever it may be, to just understand what's actually going on. And then just knowing the right questions to ask of, you're going to be rolling this new feature out. How are you on headcount from an inch standpoint, or whatever the case may be, diving in to understand like what is the problem you're actually solving, and then does headcount play a role?
Yeah. And like, what are there good metrics or ratios that you look for? Like, I think there's a lot more context, like seeing the product roadmap certainly like provides a lot of color, right? But are there some good metrics that you like to see, whether it's something like revenue to employee or cost to employee ratio? Those are the first two that come to mind for me, but are there other engineering metrics that you like looking at?
I would love to be able to see revenue to employee. and that's probably a different ratio based on team and like how much they need support, and that kind of varies against org and everything. But if you're looking at, if you're at X revenue, how is that going to be the input to making a decision on headcount? And is it headcount, or is it a different solution that can solve for it? In the age of AI right now, a lot of times it can be that you dig in to understand, what's the actual root cause. Maybe it's not a headcount solution.
Got it. Okay. That's good. Good input. I know with CandorIQ, we do a lot of these things where we bring in revenue ratios, employee ratios, cost structure, comp, et cetera, as well, and tax benefits. But I also took note of, I think, good idea, like having some of the product roadmap information in there too. Like, so every time I talk to you, I get some new ideas about what to be building.
Yeah, I have. This is one of the topics that I always like talking about blue sky. So
let's continue on the blue sky train. It's 2025. We have to talk about AI and how AI is impacting headcount planning, capacity planning. What do you see the role of AI being in this space?
Yeah, I think there's so much opportunity to be able to solve this whole, human cross-functional communication with tooling. And so if you're looking at AI from a forecasting standpoint, tied to revenue as the main driver, then here is my blue sky. Imagine this. Any leader can come into a tool, prompt scenarios and initiatives into it, say, I'm going to be rolling out this new incentive program for my team. It already knows what my team looks like today, based on these potential outputs, what, or results, what are different scenarios in which I would need headcount. And then in return, it spits out full headcount plan, org design, costs, hiring SLAs, all localized to kind of your existing org's inputs, whether that's TA capacity, that particular team's budget, so on and so forth. I would love that. Because there's so much time, at least, from my point of view, being a talent leader, I spent so many hours on a weekly basis just trying to play that puzzle of, recruiter capacity and making sure that we are clear on our prioritizations of which roles we're working on. And so, if there's a tool where you can say, here's what's going on in the business, help me create a headcount plan for this, and it spits out all those things, including a recruiting strategy, it saved me many, many hours.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great. Those are great ideas. Like scenario planning, what ifs, put capacity planning.
Yeah. It's just an idea, but would love if somebody would build something like that. Wink, wink, Haris.
I'm taking notes here, so we'll chat about that soon enough for sure. That's awesome. I know we have like 6 more minutes. Any other things you want to call out that we haven't touched on that would be helpful for like our audience, the talent team, the HR folks, the finance folks on the call? What else?
Yeah, I would say it's very easy, at least from where I've sat on the talent side of things. Like I've seen really great partnerships, really bad partnerships, or systems. The one that has worked the best is where finance and talent are working hand in hand, and being able to like speak each other's language. Tooling can help with that, thankfully. But if you were to, tomorrow, try to do something before you have any sort of tool. At a minimum, go put a recurring meeting on the calendar with the right people in the room, and then understand what those kind of initiatives are going on in the business, and really learn, how is this actually going to impact headcount needs.
Okay, got it. And I'll ask you another question. So for rising talent folks, who are up and coming, what advice do you have for them? How should they learn and grow? Any tips and tricks there?
Be curious. Go on a road show with different functional leaders, understanding what their day-to-day is, asking, I said this in my Substack, on understanding the problem they are solving. That doesn't have to be a question only when you recruit for a certain role. Go out and meet with your stakeholders and really understand, what are the problems you're solving and how can I help you? Because once you truly understand what they need, you'll be able to be a strategic talent advisor to them. And that goes a long way.
Okay, that's great advice. For anyone in any role, but we're currently here as well. All right, so what are takeaways? What are the top 3 things you want to land today?
Cross-functional collaboration, regular recurring collaboration, with a clear agenda, and being flexible to be able to shift to those changes, because in a perfect world, you are exceeding those targets, and that should be something that's celebrated. So get ahead of it proactively and understand that it's coming, by getting a seat at the table.
I think those are amazing. So proactive, being proactive, cross-functional collaboration. I think those are amazing, because as you said earlier, business strategy is living, breathing. So your forecast is living, breathing. So the downstream impact of that is also going to be living, breathing. So you just have to be very dynamic. And I'm going to also give a shout out to the be curious person point as well, whether you're in talent or HR. And the way I internalize that one is, your job is not just what's in the job description. Your job is actually really understanding the company needs, the stakeholder needs, kind of end to end, and using that to make those decisions, and being educated, I think is important. Just, right, makes you more creative, gives you empathy for the situations, and I think that's important.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, awesome, Katie. I knew this was going to be a really good deep dive into all things workforce planning, and how talent, HR, and finance can all work together, and did not disappoint. We dove into so many different topics, from strategy all the way down to tactics. So thank you so much for spending the time with us. And just again, shout out really quickly, Talent, Growth by Design, and Talent in Beta. That's Katie's Substack and organization. Follow her for tons and tons of more advice. But Katie, thank you so much for coming on the webinar.
Thank you. It's an honor to even be asked. So appreciate you having me on.
Thanks so much. All right. Bye, everyone.